I mentioned the Declaration of Independence, and now I want to mention the Constitution, because that the country, which began almost 250 years ago, was really shaped by the Constitution, which set out the rights and the duties of the president. And Article 2, Section 3 requires the president to, quote, from time to time give the Congress information of the state of the Union and to recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient, end quote. So the president's annual State of the Union address is an opportunity to say what is and to say what should be or what could be. Here at Justice Southbury, we have our own tradition of State of the Union addresses. Since the summer of 2021, we've called upon retired Pomperaug High School teacher David Bass to offer his annual thoughts on the State of the Union. So please welcome back for his annual State of the Union address, David Bass.
Well, I don't want to be... Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I'm actually reading a text, so hopefully it's not too boring and pedantic here. So the whole idea of State of the Union address right now is a scary, difficult thing. Reading the newspaper this past year has been a kind of a crushing experience. We're seeing blood and soil, Christian nationalism, deliberate erasure of history, smash and grab corruption, the president and his family and minions. We're seeing war crimes, attacks on science and on the environment and on human rights. We've had to watch good, hardworking neighbors being kidnapped, jailed, and deported after being tarred with the brush of being the worst of the worst. We see the needy being denied food and medical coverage. At times, it's almost too much to bear. We've all read accounts of the dying imperial decadence of Trump's 80th birthday party, and we wonder, is this who we are? And to some degree, the answer is yes. All of this reflects elements of who we've been through the years. It's not just Trump's personal pathology. It's about he accesses and personally reflects our nation's ills, past and present. He channels our worst collective attributes, magnifying and personifying the anger, racism, and resentment that have poisoned our country. Our political culture has become more and more dysfunctional, with facts mattering less than opinions. With legacy media being controlled by corporate interests and social media committed to profit through promoting outrage, and with AI large language models vulnerable to being politically tweaked, it all feels pretty bleak. Always prescient, Ben Franklin said, only virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become more corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. And yet, that's not who we are. We're a chaotic country for sure, but it's been our chaotic diversity that has allowed us to push back against our darker side. Most of us are willing to honestly accept that enormous problems need to be addressed as we progress forward. Steven Pinker writes about the unlimited recursive combinational power of humans, of people doing the same tasks again and again, but making changes and improvements all the time, changes that other people hear about and try. Basically, it's the power of innovation. When many people are doing this, millions of times, change happens, progress occurs. But it's also largely about institutions and how they amplify this recursive power. It's about schools, universities, science, and peer review. The beautiful chaotic process of an open society and of freedom of speech in the context of regulated capitalism and transparent economic and political power creates change. Vast benefit comes from the creation of a meritocracy of people and ideas where the best rise to the top and where institutions are transparent. This is a fight against corruption and self-dealing, which limit innovation and efficiency. It's about justice. And recursive combinational power is also cultural. It's the dynamic that makes us Americans. Diversity creates progression through creation, as opposed to the cultural stasis of MAGA homogeneity. The historian Timothy Egan has written about that stasis when he's described the politics of eternity, where adherents see the world as a cruel place made up of threats and where progress is impossible. To them, the fights among and within nations go on for eternity. It's presented that the nation has been victimized before and will be again unless the state provides security. The result is that the vital role of the government is no longer to aid society. Instead, progress gives way to doom. Eternity politicians create crises in order to manipulate emotions and, quoting Egan, to experience elation and outrage at short intervals, drowning the future and the present. Science and expertise become enemies of the eternity politician. The institutions that create progress die under the politics of eternity. Corruption and self-dealing take their place. Our job is to fight off the deadening short-term drama of the politics of eternity and to keep our eyes on what matters most. I particularly like the perspective of Anand Giridharadas when he wrote, "I see then that this is both a very dark time and potentially a very bright time. It's important to hold these truths together. When I look down at the ground of the present right now, I feel depressed. If I lift my head to the horizon, I see a different picture. This is not the chaos of the beginning of something. This is the chaos of the end of something." And on matters of race and identity, the Trump era doesn't have the crackle of a launch. It has been a mourning for white power, a mourning for a time when simply to be white and to show up was enough. A mourning for an era where simply to be a man, and not necessarily an especially capable one, could get you ahead of other people. We must understand that what we're living through is backlash. It is not the engine of history. It is the revolt against the engine of history, which makes a lot of sense to me. As Pablo Neruda wrote, you can cut down the flowers, but you can't stop the spring. It will take work and courage to reverse this trend to the dark side. Building corporate responsibility through regulation would be a great start, along with a reconsideration of the nation's distribution of wealth. We're living in a new Gilded Age, but we need to remember the 19th century version was followed by the progressive era. Creating the necessary level of change will be difficult, especially considering our well-heeled opponents. There will be arguments over policy, but we'll need to stick together. As Voltaire said, perfect is the enemy of good. We need to find and focus on our key beliefs. Laura Fields wrote in Furious Minds that liberal purposes and liberal happiness will always be plural and messy, more Mardi Gras or Renaissance fair than country club gala or debutante ball. But if liberals cannot articulate and fight in solidarity for our aspirations, what we value and live and work for, our visions for individual and collective happiness, and our beliefs and programs for what is right and fair, then why should anyone else do it for us? They will not. And there will always be plenty of people eager to impose their order on us or willing to send us careening back into pre-modernity, and not just its purer waters, but also its storms of ideological conflict and bloody strife. I'm almost done. So really, we seem to be at an inflection point. I read an article in the Times last month that really caught my eye. At a recent conference staged by the Planetary Foundation at Yale, Dean Ball, the policy wonk who is an architect of the Trump administration's original AI policy, offered a chilling prophecy describing AI as this giant acid vat which would dissolve the mediating institutions most Americans see as society. This will not be AI in government, Ball predicted. It's going to be AI as governments. How will we respond to this? Perhaps by going back to James Madison, who famously wrote in Federalist 51, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were grown men, no external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulties lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place oblige it to control itself. A dependence on the people is, no doubt, the primary control of the government, on the government, but experiences taught mankind the necessity of auxiliary precautions. We need to collectively re-engage in our role of controlling our government, and we need to implement and strengthen those auxiliary precautions in order to protect ourselves from the abuses that we're seeing every day. In its 250th year, the State of the Union is perilous, but with all of us working together, it may become strong again. C.S. Lewis wrote that courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point, which means at the point of highest reality. As Benjamin Franklin said, a successful democracy depends on a virtuous people. May we all raise our civic virtues to the level of courage in order to save our democracy and to move it toward a more perfect union.